Alrighty, folks, we'll get underway. Thank you for your patience. Nala Kadich Wajak Mort, Kayan Karak Nija Walilap Buja, we're Jinang Wajak Kadijin, we're Knitting Bula Yaya. We have everyone in attendance tonight. Councillor Thompson is running 10 minutes late, so we can expect to see him soon. Do I have any applications for leaves of absence? I think I have Councillor Sullivan. Yep.
From the 13th of July till the end of July.
Yep.
31st.
So we'll move that and get a seconder for that. Councillor Jones, all those in favour? Go on holiday. I forgot to acknowledge that Councillor Kamada is on a leave of absence at the moment in our fair sister city, Kapololando, I believe. So that is good. Oh, I don't think I do, but thank you. I'm sure he's doing a sterling job. Do we have any disclosures of interest by members? Councillor Moughlin?
Thank you. Just disclose in regards to FPOL 23067, the Fremantle RecLink Community Cup. So I've participated in that cup over the last couple of years, so I have an impartiality interest, but I'll stay and participate in the discussion.
Can I suppose that Councillor Lang, you might feel similarly?
Yeah, I feel very similarly what Councillor Moffin has said.
All right. Good. We will look forward to you staying and voting on that one with that kind of an interest. Are there any other disclosures of interest? Nope. All good. Responses to previous public questions taken on notice are printed in the agenda. So that's going to bring us through to public question time. We've just spent a little bit of time trying to sort out who is here for what item so that we can try and reorganise the agenda to allow you to go at a relatively reasonable hour. I will let elected members know that after last council meeting's 10 something or other PM finish time, we may do a dinner break if we go past 8:45 tonight. So perhaps that is an incentive, perhaps that is not. All right, I will go to public question time. Okay, I've got a few of you listed, and I think I'll stick with tradition and go to Ian Kerr first. Oh, just Ian knows this, but for the rest of everyone, 3 minutes. You're being recorded for the minutes. Please speak into the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You make me sound very old when you talk about tradition. However, tonight's agenda item on the budget states that no specific consultation has occurred on the draft budget, which it attempts to justify by saying community consultation and engagement has previously occurred during development of the strategic community plan from which the corporate business plan was developed. Now, given that the very nature of the annual budget makes it high impact and citywide, why did Council not engage at all 4 levels identified in its own community engagement policy for such issues, namely inform, consult, involve and collaborate? Elected members have no doubt had confidential briefings, but it's difficult for an outsider to wade through the detail in the short time available. Why does the City of Fremantle not publish the agendas of Council briefing meetings, open them to the public, and live stream and post them on YouTube, as the City of Vincent does, for example? The agenda report on the budget is in item 20 or 28 on tonight's agenda, buried at the foot of page 2 and occupying just 21 pages of a total of 250. The detail is in the meeting attachments, where the budget is items 28 to 30 out of 36 and 138 pages out of 788. In total, the agenda and attachments total 1,038 pages. That's more than 2 reams of paper. Now, James Joyce's Ulysses has a mere 732 pages, and very few people have read it in its entirety. And certainly I've never got past about page 500. So why has the 2023-24 budget been buried in an unusually large agenda, instead of being discussed at a special council meeting as last year. In the 138 pages for the budget, I could find no mention of the cat bus, so I asked for assurance that it has been adjusted to include 84,000 for the additional 3 months as resolved by council. I did note, however, that the budget includes $2,150,000 from municipal fund for the South Beach toilets and change rooms. If this were funded by borrowings as a capital project, and as the Leighton Beach ones were, the rate rise would be reduced from 9% to 5.4%. Why is City of Fremantle forcing the ratepayers of today to fund the decades of benefits to the residents of the future? Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll get a response on the cat bus budget item from the Director of City Business.
The allocation has been factored into the budget.
Thank you. I think also, at least related to the budget, Paul Jones, if you'd like to come up next. Well, that was in 3 minutes. I'll give you your own 3 minutes.
Thank you, councillors. My issue is about the flooding in Johanna Street in North Fremantle. I purchased a property there in last year, and I have a development approval to construct a house. As we got to meet our neighbours, it was quite clear there was persistent flooding in the street caused by a storm water drain which is connected to the river. What happens with surging over high tide, this floods the street up to 400 millimetres in an area of over 80 square metres. This has caused serious damage to people's cars, and it makes it impossible for residents and visitors to come and walk to their houses without going through floodwater. Our resident has captured this flooding photographically and also referred to the Bureau of Meteorology reports, which show a lot of this happens on high tide with very minimal rain. So it's about the river surging up into the street. I have worked with my neighbours, which we represent over 9 residents, and we had a good meeting this week where we met Kevin Rowe, Jim, and other members from planning. And after that, we put our case forward. After that, I had a call from them to say that there is a low-cost solution where they'll look at creating an alteration to the drainage in Johanna Street and a permeable surface in the car park to make sure it drains away. And incidentally, none of this is caused by overlapping from the bank. It goes through the storm water drain. I've also been told that the council is currently undertaking an infrastructure status report and drainage of the whole area, and I hope that leads to a better outcome. But we would like support for the short-term resolution of that alteration to the drainage which has been put forward by infrastructure. The long-term picture is, when I got my development approval, I was told to raise the ground level of my house up by 1.25 metres. I have done that and have approval for the planning. Now, when I present this to my neighbours, they're all saying, what about us? We're just going to flood. And I've been given a map from DEWA by planning to say this is the reason why. The whole of our street and the oval is completely covered in blue. In speaking to the infrastructure, they say we have no success dealing with Swan River Trust. We can't build a levee. We can't do that. But I really think I'm going to approach my local member and federal member to push this issue that we need a bigger solution to the Swan River and rising sea levels. And I hope I get support from council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. I might just go to the Director of Infrastructure to fill in any gaps. It sounds like you have had a fairly comprehensive discussion with some of his team, but I'll let Graham add anything that he would like to.
Thank you. Through the chair. So yes, I understand you met with some of our officers in respect to the longer term solution and what we might be able to do in the short term. I think the key thing to look at is in this year's budget we have an allocation for drainage assessments. There are 4 key areas, and this has been highlighted as one of those. So our focus is to look at what the longer term solution might need to be and what medium to long term solutions we need to design in now to look at that area and the catchment. So that's progressing and will progress over the course of the next few months. in respect to the short-term solution, to be honest, I know that there has been something proffered up and put on the table. I don't know the detail of it yet, but we'll follow that up and make sure that we can expedite that as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say in response to that, this was
I can't, in council, we can't go back and forth during question time.
okay. Well, it
Sorry,
was on
so
a short-term plan in 2012, and here we are.
yeah.
I've had no
So I invite you
communication from the
to
council
keep
either.
talking to
Thank you.
the officers that you met the other day, Paul. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go to planning. Philip Stakel in relation to PC 23061.
Good evening. My name is Philip Stakel, the architect for number 29 Swanbourne Street, alterations and additions. Our clients, David and Mary, are also here tonight. I'm here to speak for the planning officer's recommendation to approve these alterations and additions. As detailed in their report, the proposal has been considered at 2 planning committee meetings prior to this evening. In that time, our design has evolved to respond to comments from the planning department as well as councillors and the immediate neighbours. The proposal before you tonight therefore represents the 5th design iteration since lodgement. We're glad to have had the opportunity to refine the project over this time. And in fact, it's always been ours and our clients' intention to arrive at a sympathetic solution. Before the application was originally lodged, we asked our clients to contact their immediate neighbours to the south to show them what was being proposed. The intention was to engage and to make amendments if needed prior to lodgement. Unfortunately, the owners of number 31 to the south weren't able to engage at that time, nor when our clients tried to contact them following lodgement. So in absence of that opportunity, I just wanted to say it's been great working with the committee and the planning department to refine our project. So we feel the current design, well, we hope the current design represents a good balance between the preservation of the neighbours' amenity as well as creating amenity for our clients. We hope that you agree and are willing to approve the proposal tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Still on planning items, Siska Spencer in relation to the 140 structure plan or McCabe Street. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm sure you're quite used to presentations from members of the public that are largely brickbats and complaints, but I'd like to record my thanks to people who've written the application or consideration of the application for 140 Stirling Highway, because it's admirably forthright, clear and well argued in its reasoning for why that application should be rejected. That means, of course, that I agree with you, but it is very well done and congratulations, and I hope you're going to be successful. I did want to raise a more generic question, which relates not only to 140, but to the whole series of new developments around the corner of McCabe and Stirling Highway, because it seems from the PSPs that I've read that each applicant is only required to speak about their block of land. And what happens all around it or doesn't happen is not something, it's not my department. So we've got a whole lot of exits coming from maybe up to half a dozen developments over the next few years, all of them coming onto McCabe Street, all of them within 400 metres of Stirling Highway, and probably subject quite a lot to the usual rush hour congestions. But the applications that I've seen do not recognise that they have any other responsibility other than to provide an exit and an entrance. What happens on McCabe Street? Not my department. Roundabout, Little Palm Tree, that's it. And I do not see how that's going to work in the long term. My question then to the council is, to what extent do you have powers to compel applicants for development to consider the whole, not only their little bit, when it comes to traffic management and congestion, which is going to be considerable? I confess I haven't seen the Main Roads Department's submission on what they've said on this particular development, but I'd be very happy to hear what the council as a whole has by way of power to compel applicants to consider concession.
All right, I might go to the Director of Planning, Place and Urban Development on that one to answer the powers question, and I might then speak a little bit about advocacy.
Thank you through the chair, and thank you for your earlier comments on the report. It's a very complex issue, of course, getting a DA of this scale through. We certainly do encourage applicants to look at the broader traffic management plan. I'd cite the example for 130 Stirling Highway, where a comprehensive traffic report was done. That's not necessarily something that we automatically agree with. We need to then review it ourselves. Ultimately, the decision will come back to Main Roads, and it is with Main Roads to look at improvements to McCabe Street and ultimately that intersection. Again, we've seen some drawings we don't necessarily agree with, but we certainly are aware that Main Roads are aware of looking at this. It's a little bit chicken and egg. The sort of value that is being touted for the upgrade is in excess of 10 million, between 10 and 20. Obviously, a state government is not going to invest that amount of money in an intersection until development is approved. So there's a bit of chicken and egg involved, but ultimately it's Main Road's responsibility. We do have a role in there to provide advice to them.
Thank you. And I think perhaps just to add to that, we are really aware of this as the broader issue of mobility transport planning in that area, and from an advocacy perspective, trying to sort of raise the attention of state government about the kind of future possibilities here. It's pretty high on our agenda, so we will continue to follow that up, but we really appreciate your input. Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, and now I think we have Clayton Gunning, followed by Roy Lewison. And if I haven't said your name and you thought you were going to say something, please bring that to our attention.
Members, I sent an email out that I'm sure you've all received and read on Sunday about the public golf course. Golf's something very passionate about, and I think we've been kicking the can down the road and missed so many opportunities with the redevelopment of the public golf course. It's very hard to stand here and tell you how many shortcomings there are without going into it and looking like you're just trying to be nasty towards the people that handled it, but the number of failures is catastrophic. I read you've got a private or a confidential discussion this evening, for which some of my fears have been allayed, which I appreciate, that nothing's happening except authorising the officers to continue negotiations with business or whoever putting expressions of interest. But I would just like to urge you that under no circumstances should anything be even recommended, let alone agreed to, without going back again and having workshops. We had workshops for years over it, and if we're going to be start again. It's more important to get the right result than to think, well, it's been 5 years, we've got to do it this year or do it next year. So I've written to you, but I'm now urging you again, make sure it's workshop, make sure the community's involved. And if it means starting again, that's what we're doing. But please don't agree to anything because the people who've been working on council side for this period have shown that they can't get it done without anything they recommend. Without any public input, I would be concerned that they've got it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Clayton, and I believe Roy on the same issue.
Mayor, councillors and staff, just wish to make a statement in regards to the Fremantle Public Golf Course tender. I submitted a correspondence to council in 2020 outlining that in order for the council and ratepayers to get the best out of the Fremantle Public Golf Course site, we need to do something different that was already on offer in the market. I'll resubmit that since I doubt if too many people actually read it back in 2020. The paper listed all the 9-hole golf courses in Perth, and in particular the 3 which are close to Fremantle, i.e. Point Walter, Cottesloe and Claremont. It went into detail as to why Fremantle Public Golf Course could not and should not compete with these 3 courses. It also cited a range of statistics as to why people play golf and also the demographics of those who play golf. Very briefly, this 2018 study surveyed 160,000 people and asked them what their primary purpose was for playing golf. 60,000 said it was for fun and enjoyment. 50,000 said it was for social reasons. 40,000 said physical health and fitness. and only 10,000 said performance and competition. So on another front, and even more briefly, the number one reason people under 40 do not play golf is because they're time poor, they have other commitments. This is why the driving range and a potential Goanna golf situation would be essential to this site. Based on the above, maintaining another standard par 34 9-hole public golf course is business as usual and quite frankly is very pale, male and extremely stale. 75% of this A-class reserve is attributable to golf at the moment. 25% is used for community recreation, of which the mountain bike track is now an obvious draw card. What the community and the ratepayers want to see is 50% golf, i.e. the Royal Fremantle Golf Course, 25% community-based activities, which we already have in Boo Park and the mountain bike track, and 25% of community-based activities with golf, i.e. put the golf into community and the community into golf, literally for all ages. I would suggest the Mayor, the councillors and the staff organise a corporate day up at the Point Walter Goanna Golf to really appreciate what I'm trying to communicate here. The current plan for the course and the new buildings is not in step with what the community and the ratepayers want, and a revamp and a rethink is drastically required. Finally, when a revamp is undertaken, can you please involve the community? Like long-term members we've just heard from Clayton, and also from people like Sarah Gauntry, who was supposed to be here tonight, who's been a golf pro in her past and actually played golf representatively for Australia. The community is really growing tired of this consultationism and tokenism, where the decisions have already been made and the community participation is purely to tick boxes. It's extremely patronising and quite frankly, we're really tired of it. If this experience and expertise within the community goes untapped, you are doing yourselves and the members of this city a major disservice. We do not want to be consulted at the end of the project and be given 3 choices and asked what colour paving we want. Please reconsider, think outside the box and let the community participate right from the very beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. That is all the questions I have listed. So unless anyone else leaps up now, I will say that is the end of public question time. We have a petition, I believe, from Councillor Lorver. Did you want to speak to and present that petition, Councillor Lorver?
Yes, I would. And I just sent it around to elected members and agenda minutes and the CEO. So we got a petition from Tristan, who lives in Hilton, about some traffic calming on Howson Street. And just for those that are keeping track, this is now the 3rd petition that we've received about traffic calming in and around Hilton in the area. It is an issue, and I'll just read it out real quickly, I guess. So the petition says that this petition aims to address the dangerous speeding of cars along Howson Street in Hilton. Howson Street is commonly used as a rat run between Oldham Crescent and Winterfell Road. Residents are increasingly concerned about the safety of pedestrians, cyclists, and other drivers entering and exiting driveways along the street. In particular, residents are worried about the safety of the many young children who live, play, and ride their bicycles on our street. This petition calls for emergency?
Wow.
I guess it's kind of a traffic emergency. But the petition calls for cyclist-friendly speed humps to be installed on their street, as have been installed on Grigg Place. The goal is to create a safer environment for all residents. So I will just note that the Director of Infrastructure and his team is already looking at kind of this general area for traffic calming, and there are some traffic cameras that are installed right now on Oldham Crescent. And so this is just yet another ask from the residents that we can look at it holistically and just make it a safe environment.
Thanks, Councillor Lorver. Are there any other petitions? I hadn't heard of any. So as far as I know, no deputations, special deputations or presentations. So I'll move that we confirm the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council dated 24th of May 2023, seconded by Councillor Lorver. All those in favour? Doug, we're just voting on the minutes. Yep, you're good. Councillor Thompson, I should say. Elected member communication. Do we have any elected member communication? We do not, so we'll carry on past that. That's going to take us to reports and recommendations from committees. So we'll start with planning. We have people in the gallery for both of the planning items. So Councillor Jones, as Chair of Planning, did you want to introduce the items at all?
Yes, I'll just draw people's attention to the fact that the the recommendation we're discussing is on page 29 of the agenda, and it's plans submitted on the 13th of June. I think it's now the fourth set of plans that have been submitted, and I just would thank the applicants for the efforts they've made to minimise the impact on the neighbours, and very happy to move this iteration of the plans.
And a seconder for that one, Councillor Groom. All right. Was there further discussion on the item? Nope. So we will put that one to a vote. All those in favour? And that looks unanimous to me. That was a short night for you guys. But that means you've done all the hard work already, often the way in planning. The second planning item, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, there's the item 10, the precinct structure plan for 140 Stirling Highway. The recommendation in the agenda is unanimously supported by the committee, and I will move that.
Thank you. And a seconder for that, Councillor Thompson. All right. Councillor Jones, did you wish to open debate on that one?
Only to say that I think that the report from the officers was very good, very comprehensive, and the feedback from the community was that they were very happy at the report and the recommendation. This obviously is a recommendation to the WA Planning Commission. It's not a council decision, and probably will take quite a long time from here. But obviously, traffic is one of the critical issues, and but there are many others mentioned in the officer's recommendation.
Yeah. And I'm just checking. So what I'm seeing in the short version of the agenda is part, was that 9? It's from red to green. I'm assuming that is part of the committee recommendation. Just look at the director. So it's an amended officer recommendation. So that's what you're moving there,
Yes.
Councillor Jones, the amended officer recommendation.
I think all that's doing is clearing up a bit of vocabulary about the difference between different types of uses, which has been clarified in the officer's revision.
Okay, all good. All right.
Moved, if I may.
Yep.
The documents actually suggested that the officers were replacing Part 9 IX, when in fact the officers were intending to replace Part 11 XI, and so the minute staff have corrected that. So just for the public record, it is what's in green is replacing XI, not IX.
Thank you. That makes a heck of a lot more sense. Very good.
I presume the mover and seconder agree?
Yep.
And the text that is in red in the printed documents with a strike through, does that remain?
Yes. So
yep.
If it was struck through, IX should remain.
Yep.
And the bit that should be struck through is XI and replaced with the green. So
that makes abundant sense. Thank you. And Councillor Jones, I think that is what you thought you were moving.
Yep.
Yes. Good. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, on the item as moved, I know Councillor Sullivan has some amendments for this one. Any further discussion on that? So otherwise we'll go to Councillor Groom. Thank you.
Well, I'm happy to talk at any point, but yep, I'll wait in. So I'd like to also acknowledge the work by the officers. It's a really thorough and sound report, and also the work that the North Fremantle community have done yet again to respond to a proposal like this. I think the commentary about the impacts of having to think about each site one by one is really front of mind for me. Certainly in planning committee, we can't look at them that way, but the system requires we have to. So I think there is a piece of work for council to engage with the state government and the various landowners to really look at this precinct in a much more holistic way, instead of considering each person's kind of wonder plan. So that is something we'll be thinking and talking about in the coming weeks, how we handle that, because it's clear that this is an important development node, and we can't put our head in the sand and just think these proposals are going to go away. So, there's a real piece of work to make sure we've got a contemporary plan for that whole node, both sides of the railway going forward, and that it's one that meets the needs of community but also kind of meets the current needs of the landowners, and that we seek to reconcile that. So, yeah, thanks for the officers, but just want to signal that I don't think these conversations are over by any stretch of the imagination.
Well said. All right, if there are no further speakers, we'll go to Councillor Sullivan's amendments.
Thank you. I might move them in two parts just to make it sort of simple in a sense. So if I could move my amendment to part 2.1, to Roman numeral 1.
Sure, seconded by Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. The reason I'm just moving that separately is because it was a conversation that I had with staff about the wording of the recommendation primarily. It had referred to local centre, when in fact the policy that it refers to, a local centre would be almost an automatic inclusion in a site like this. What I knew the officers meant activity centre, and so when I raised that, the director agreed that that was a minor oversight, and that the wording that you see there now is actually what they meant. So it replaces the wording local centre with activity centre, and basically highlights that the scale of the development as proposed would probably fall under either a district centre, say something like Napoleon Street in Cottesloe, or even potentially with the the extent of floor area of commercial, a secondary centre, which is the sort of centre you see at Claremont. And so the other thing is that that policy also talks about and identifies which are the station precincts along the Fremantle line, and it just emphasises that this is not and cannot be considered a station precinct because it's not within 800 metres of a station. So it's really, the officers were thinking about making that amendment, but I'd already included it in mine, so they were happy to include that.
All right, so on the amendment, just the first part 1 amendment there. Any further speakers? If not, I will put that one to a vote. All those in favour? Yep, that's unanimous. And back to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. The rest of them are really a suite of, I guess, clarifications or explanations. So I'll move those, what I consider to be relatively minor changes.
Yep. And a seconder, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Effectively, what I was trying to do, so I'll just quickly run through them. In part 2.4 was really just to provide some clarity about which of the elements of the particular policy, the precinct design policy, which of the elements primarily the development or the proposal was failing or not reaching those objectives. And I think it's important to do that because when you send something to the West Australian Planning Commission, you know, they know their policies back to front, inside out, and you can't just sort of, in my opinion, just sort of give a general comment that it fails to meet that objective and this one. You need to actually say what it is or which area of that objective it fails in, and that's what these are doing. I particularly wanted to include the Vlaming Parklands element because that's often overlooked. So when it talks about open space and the like, the detail of that really is it doesn't connect to the Vlaming Parklands at all, and that is something that the North Fremantle community have been trying to implement for decades. It's probably 40 years now. There's a few other just little minor changes, and if people have got questions, I'm happy to respond to those questions in summing up. The main addition, I guess, is the very last item, which really just tries to sum up where we're at. And it kind of picks up on the issues that Councillor Groom was just talking about, which is that there is kind of this inadequacy in the sub-regional planning, and the planning for McCabe Street Precinct is a part of that sub-regional planning. And unless we can work with the state government and the adjoining local governments and really deal with that sub-regional planning, these types of developments that we're seeing at 130 and 140 and the impacts of the other developments that are already in McCabe Street can't be adequately accommodated in a planning sense. And we get to the point now where we've got two very large development proposals, which, in my opinion, if you look at the wording, are premature. And by premature, I mean they might be okay in their intensity at some future stage, but they aren't until such time as we know for sure that the sub-regional planning, the transport planning, the road systems and the like can support that level of development intensity in those locations. And so that's really what this last element is trying to say, because it's such an important part of asking the Planning Commission to not allow this structure plan to go ahead at this point in time. It highlights to them that even though they might be passionate about infill development, as people in this room also are, it has its time and its place, and it needs to be supported by good overall planning, transport planning and road planning and the like. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. I just want to focus on one particular issue which has been raised many times, but we seem to have difficulty in getting any state agencies to take it on board, and that is there's an obvious opportunity to reopen Leighton Station and make that a kind of plaza that connects to the ocean, at the same time improve the road system, the bridge. I mean, there could be a whole second story to the railway station which connects up to the ocean. That would then allow North Fremantle Railway Station to move further south, which is on the plans for sometime in the next 10 years, and become a railway station for North Fremantle Town Centre, connecting the town centre through to the beach via the new developments on the old Caltex site. So there's a really obvious set of things can happen, and I've raised this at a number of meetings, but I hope it's taken up by the future Fremantle workshops. But it seems so obvious that there's so much land here to be developed, and there's so many opportunities to do it well. The connections to the beach, if you just think down the railway line, I think Victoria Street, you could come out of Victoria Street Station and go to the beach. You'd then come down all the way past the nursery, the plant place, to the footbridge, which may not be there much longer. It's not in great condition. And then you've got to go all the way to Todden Road. So we've got like 3 kilometres of beach, which have 2 road connections and 2 pedestrian connections in that whole strip from Mosman Park down to the bridge. And it's such an opportunity waiting that nobody seems to want to grasp. And it's very, very frustrating. And I think the east-west connections through the peninsula have been an item for the community for about 50 years, and they just get worse. You know, every time they do anything, they make it worse. So I support this amendment, but I just want to make that point.
Jeff Graham.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it's just on that point 12. I'm not totally against it. However, I do think it's sort of trying to hold up the structure plan in some ways. And just taking on what Councillor Jones said, yes, move the train station, build a bridge, make the road networks. Well, we're looking most probably $50 to $75 million in doing something like that. Now, if we were sitting around the state budget table, I don't think there'd be one member of the government that would say, this is a priority, let's go and do it. It'd be a long-term project. And I just think, you know, this will go to some appeal board somewhere along the line, and they'll think, oh, well, we all know this. The tea lady up from the state government mostly knows about the problems that this area and this transport node has. So, you know, I'll support it, but I just think we've got to be a little bit careful here because it's perhaps a little bit out of our realm. You know, this has already been made aware to the Minister for Planning and the Minister for Transport, they all know what it's about down there, and they'll have their views like we have our views, and we could be waiting a long, long time for anything to happen.
Perhaps I might give a slightly more optimistic take on things than Councillor Graham. We've been working closely with the town of Cottesloe and the town of Mosman Park in order to try and get some traction around this precinct, and I think the town of Mosman Park have fairly progressed in discussions around the Wellington Street crossing and underpass, which has been a really long-term item for them, and closing the Victoria Street station crossing, which is, I think, now the most dangerous level crossing in the metro area. So I do feel like we've got some wind in the sails about this discussion. It is outside the Future of Fremantle Planning Committee area that ends south of the Leighton development, but I think you cannot look at the two things as disconnected, and I think that is giving us some traction with government to be able to talk about ultimately where do the roads go, where do the stations go, where does the traffic go, how does it all connect up. So I'm a little more optimistic than you are, Councillor Graham, but nonetheless I think I support these amendments because I think it is important to be really clear about where we feel the structure plan is a little bit falling short. Anyone else, or to Councillor Sullivan to close? No news. There you go. All right, so we'll put the remainder of Councillor Sullivan's amendments to the vote. All those in favour? And that also appears to be unanimous. This is going smoothly. Touch wood. All right, so that wraps up planning. Oh, yeah, thanks. Thank God you're here. All right, so the item as amended with Councillor Sullivan's amendments. No further speakers, so all those in favour? Easy. Thank you. That is much more complete. Now, Councillor Archibald, I understand FPOL managed to move quite a few things on block, and I might just try and replicate that to move us through the agenda. I'll test it out. If not, we may skip ahead to some of the items that people are in the gallery for. I'm wondering if people would be comfortable with us moving items 4 through 11 on block, plus item 13. I'm noting that the corporate energy plan is pulled out of that. Councillor Graham, did you want to pull something out of that too?
Well, I'd like to make a comment in relation to either 5 or 6. I can make the same comment.
All right, so maybe I'll pull out 5 from that list. And Councillor Lorver, you wanted to make a comment somewhere?
Yeah, about a procedural motion for item 8.
Item 8. Okay. Sounds like there might be a bit more in this. What I'm going to do is do the on-block ones, and then we'll come back to the FPOL agenda because there's no one in the gallery really desperate, I think, to hear. Councillor Vusick.
Thanks.
Yep. Yep. And okay, so I'm going to go 4, 6, 7, 9, 11, and 13. So I'm going to move those on block, seconded by Councillor Archibald. All those in favour? Okay, just tidies up the list a bit. So we are coming back to 5, 8, 10, 12. However, I believe more people are in the gallery for the budget. I don't know if I dare try and do what we just did with FPOL to audit and risk. Would anyone be open to 1 to 6 from audit and risk going on block? There's an Alta Officers Rec for 7. I haven't had any other amendments for ARMC, so I think one. It's confidential. Yeah. Yep, so 1 to 6 ARMC. So I'm going to move those on block. Seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? Okay. So it looks like we're making good headway. All right, so I'll come back to 7 and obviously the confidential one at the end. So let's go to the budget. We'll move the officer's recommendation for the adoption of the annual budget. And get a second of that, Councillor Archibald. I'm guessing there may be some people who wish to speak.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Because some of the items previously in the agenda kind of relate to the budget, and we might want to do those first before we handle the budget. Just do them in order of the ones that we have.
Are you specifically referring to, guessing the destination development? Because I don't think there are major public budget implications from any others. Just looking over for corporate energy plan, I don't think there's major. Yeah. All right. So maybe you're suggesting you'd like to deal with FPOL 23068 first. Yep. Okay. So I'll move the officer's recommendation to adopt the Destination Development Strategic Plan and get a seconder for that from Councillor Pemberton. Do we want to have any speakers on this? Councillor Lorber.
Well, then can I just move my deferral for this item if there's no speakers?
Yeah. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Vusic. Do we speak on deferrals? So it's up there on the screen.
Can I speak on the item about the deferral?
Don't believe you can speak on a deferral, no. So you need to speak before a deferral, just for future reference.
Okay, sorry. Can I speak on the item before I move my deferral?
You've moved it.
Yeah.
So I can't. I think standing orders might be a little strict on us there. No, it's I think. Well, not on a deferral. It's a procedural motion. Yeah. So you. Okay, we're not going to debate this in the council, guys. Thank you. So with a deferral has been moved. The reasons are on the screen. It's been seconded by Councillor Vusic, so we'll vote on the deferral. All those in favour? So that and against. So that deferral is lost. So the item is still on the table, and Councillor Law would like to speak on it.
Yeah, because sorry, I didn't get to say this before the last vote, but there are several things in this plan that are a bit concerning. This has been described as a pivot to destination marketing, to encouraging investment in Fremantle to us, and I absolutely share that goal. Encouraging investment is definitely a good thing. But this strategy was brought to us 48 hours before FPOL voted on it, and at that time, nothing that we could say would have been able to alter it at all. And while tonight we've got a really full agenda, it's not the time to debate the strategy. There's nothing in here that actually defines what success looks like. We're going to be spending $858,000. And I just would really like to know what that actually will accomplish. The closest that I could get to what that money is going to get for us was on page 378 of the attached documents. In phase 1, it says the objective is to convert brand awareness to business and marketing campaigns that will be constantly reviewed and refined by the city and the destination marketing working group to achieve this objective. So success in phase 1 is just constantly reviewing and refining marketing campaigns. That's kind of what I pulled from that. On phase 2, it talks about we'll seek to implement key destination infrastructure and a number of transformative projects where Fremantle is a key stakeholder and which will contribute to Fremantle's reputation as a destination city should be coming to fruition or have reached significant milestones by 2025. So again, in phase 2, success is defined by already approved projects getting delivered. So the life of this plan is for 4 years. We didn't have any time to really digest it before it was brought to FPOL. Over 4 years, this is going to be nearly $4 million probably. We may approve the same amount next year. We may go more, we may go less. But I think it would be really wise for us to have some idea of how we're going to judge the success for a strategy that costs this much money before we just sign off on it. Other things that I personally feel might be more handy for us to look at if we're going to encourage investment is our policy settings. Are those right? Are we actually encouraging investment through the policy settings that we have? And do we need to make adjustments there? I'm skeptical that an advertising campaign will convince the already approved projects to start building. I'll just say that. But there are challenges. We all know that. And on June 11th, just a few weeks ago, our former mayor talked about some of the challenges to investment in Fremantle. And he had this to say. He said, the state government is the biggest landowner in central Fremantle. We have to encourage it to develop empty sites into apartments. Many have been empty for a very long time. This is crucial for populating the CBD. We just have to get it done. So the empty sites are owned by the state government was a challenge that this strategy is going to seek to address probably. But other barriers identified in that same article included the car yards down where the shacks are and all that. There's a sewage line underneath those that the state government owns. So that's why those aren't being developed. This strategy can address that with an advertising campaign. Places like Victoria Quay, that's owned by the port. We all know that. I don't know that an advertising campaign is going to convince them to actually do that. So, you know, I just really think that, you know, this is a strategy that we're potentially going to adopt, but I'm just don't think that without any clear definition of what success looks like, or even anything beyond reviewing what was being done, or having any sort of idea as to how we're going to, this is a significant chunk of change too, $858,000 that a deferral would have allowed us to actually spend some time working on this. So I'm going to encourage my fellow colleagues to, we're only left with voting it down, and hopefully we can have something else that comes back to us later that has clear metrics for success, talks about how we're actually going to deliver the outcomes that we all want to see, which is more investment in Fremantle. And I'm sorry that it's going to have to encourage you to vote no, because I was really hoping a deferral would have allowed that conversation to take place, because we haven't done that yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vusic.
Thank you. I'm just going to add to Councillor Lorver. I think $858,000 is a lot of money. We, as a community, have been asked to give up our cat bus. I see $360,000 in a cat bus here, and I think you still would be able to achieve the advertising and the promotion of the city with what's left. I might also add that if you have a look at the amount of promotion that each business does of the city of Fremantle, that runs into millions of dollars every year, and I think we should never ignore that contribution is huge, and I see the city's contribution as basically just supporting them. So I think it's a lot of money. I liked Councillor Lorver's alternative in terms of deferral, but in the absence that we couldn't get that up, I would be also saying let's have another look at it. I see the cat bus in here. Thank you.
Councillor Pemberton.
Thank you. I guess I'll first of all start with, I guess, a declaration of interest in some ways, in the sense that I have a marketing background, and so I might be slightly skewed towards the idea that, yeah, money spent on marketing is a good idea. I'll also kind of share my experience, because I worked for the City of Perth a long time ago now, but in their marketing and events team, doing the sort of stuff that this strategy sort of speaks to. And at that point, the City of Perth was trying to shed the image of Dullsville, the tag Dullsville. And my job, I was the public relations officer, and my job was trying to move away from and stop that language that was being used out there, and so on. And it was through a range of strategies in terms of these activations and events and ways that we would engage the business community, and the direct marketing in terms of advertising spend, but also the service delivery in terms of service to customers who visited and the experience that they would have. And all of those things are really important. I guess the reason why I don't support a deferral, and why I do, I mean, you know, we're really fortunate to have a good collection of, you know, industry experts and people who are on the coalface in terms of the day-to-day interactions with customers in our city and so on, advising the strategy. I really worry about taking the foot off the pedal in terms of we seem to be building some momentum right now around reasserting Fremantle's place as a place of significance within the Perth metropolitan area. I think we still have a long way to go. I do support Councillor Lorver in terms of, you know, having measurable goals. You know, I mean, I will work with you on let's actually try and develop some SMART goals that are actually, you know, a little bit more articulated around the outcomes we'd like to see. But I don't want to just pull the lever on this and not continue, because what we also see is a really competitive market and a really busy kind of marketing environment and so on. And if we're not present, we're invisible. And, you know, I've been in Freo long enough to remember when we were just the basket case no one wanted to deal with. And I really don't want us to end up back there. I think it's really important that we continue to maintain you know, the presence within the market and projecting the image that we want people to see to come here as we continue to enhance the experience. So I don't disagree that the experience is just as important as the marketing, because that's part of the whole package. But I think the strategy is well informed. It's contemporary. And it's really important that we maintain visibility in the wider kind of environment. Otherwise, we will disappear and be irrelevant. And that's my concern. And that's why I think the thinking behind this is good. There may be more that we can add to it to make it better. But in essence, we actually need to keep doing what we're doing and build on it.
Councillor Lorver, I assume you have a question?
Yes, thank you, councillors, for your comments on this as well. I appreciate it. And I agree with a lot of what everyone's saying. But my question is, on page 514 of the attachments, one of the outcomes it says is the marketing plan should be submitted to council for adoption by September 2018. That's already passed. So again, this is part of my concern about giving a deferral, is that there's a lot
Third question, Councillor Lorver.
Sorry. So can I ask what date that is actually supposed to be? Because 2018 is obviously not going to work.
May I ask, I'll get the Director of City Business to respond. It appears we might be looking at the plan that's passed, the previous plan, rather than the destination development.
This is on the terms of reference for the new destination. It's on
Okay, page number again?
514.
If you don't mind, we're getting there, and I'll go to Councillor Groom, and as soon as we have an answer, we'll come back.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Lorver, for your questions, and fully supportive of the idea that the plan needs to be supported by some really clear, measurable indicators, SMART goals, and so forth. 100% agree that it's a lot of money, and it's easy to look at plenty of other places in the city that we could achieve our objectives for our individual wards or for the city as a whole. And that's the same with every item on our budget, but this one is one that certainly in my 4 years I keep wanting to get my fingers on. But I have come to the position we've achieved a lot in terms of establishing the brand in the last 3 or 4 years. And to stop the investment now actually throws that investment away. And this long-term view now that we need to turn that brand into an investment brand, purely for the goal of building our ratepayers and income. So, you know, the question for staff is what's the return on investment target for this? What does it deliver us in rates? How many other cat buses might it deliver us if we get those ratepayers in, that investment in, and really build the core of the city? 100% agree that we need a policy framework so that when people turn up on the door and say, how do we get in? We've got the policy framework that supports that. But the best policy framework in the world doesn't let people know about us and think that this is a place to invest and drive that competitive market. Similarly, with all the vacant blocks, the reason they're vacant is because that demand isn't there yet to make them a viable development option. The state government is not going to develop most of the land they own, but when the price is right, they'll flog it, because we've seen them do that in our suburbs. So as much as I would love to spend $850,000 on traffic calming all through Whitegum Valley and Hilton and turning all our sumps into green parks and all the other amazing things we can think about to do with it, I have become convinced, because I certainly wasn't in my first year on council, I have come convinced that we have to stay the course, we have to back ourselves and invest in the future of our city, and this is one of the ways that we need to do that.
Thanks, Councillor Groom, and I'll go back to the Director of City Business on the question.
Through the Mayor. So page 514 is the original terms of reference that were created prior to the original strategy being developed. The original terms of reference brought together the working group before the actual strategy was created, and one of their key roles was to create the strategy. That reference in the terms of reference is simply saying develop the strategy and bring it to council for approval before September 2018.
Thank you for the clarification. Is there further speakers? Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll only speak briefly, but I particularly like the points that Councillor Groom had made. And for me, the destination marketing strategy, it's an investment for the city. I don't view this as a cost. This is about what Fremantle can become and what Fremantle is at the moment. And I also just want to pick up particularly on the term being thrown around that this is somehow an advertising campaign. This isn't an advertising campaign. And looking at the strategy itself, there are 6 pillars that are part of this. One of those is brand and marketing, business tourism, gateway. So Fremantle is a gateway to Western Australia, a gateway to Rottnest, a gateway to Australia. Product and experience. So when people are here in Fremantle, what is the experience they have? We hear people bang on all the time about how terrible an experience they have when they come to Fremantle. This strategy is about making sure when they turn up in Fremantle, they have a positive experience. And it's about events and activations. So all those things that happen in Fremantle, either driven by the City of Fremantle or actively sought out to happen in Fremantle, or because of the investment in the marketing strategy, people go, I want my event to be in Fremantle. These are all the outcomes that we see from the strategy itself. And I think that these 6 pillars, they're economic drivers for the city. They're not just nice to have advertising campaign jingles or whatever it might be. These are economic drivers, and I wholeheartedly support the strategy. Also noting, we approve a budget for 1 year. So let's go have a look at the next stage and dive into it over the next 12 months, continue to work with the economic development team. And if we want to change that budget allocation, as we do with everything else, staff must bring that to us to be reviewed.
Thanks, Councillor Mofflin, and you've probably covered most of the points I was going to make, and thank you for that. I think one of the things I would point out is this shift from destination marketing to destination development, and the fact that we are now in a position to do destination development. There would have been no point prior to the destination marketing strategy to invest in all the things that make Fremantle a great place to visit, because nobody was coming. The doors are open, people are coming through them. This is the opportune time to start investing in wayfinding, parking transparency, interpretation, product development, all the things that allow people to have that new and great experience when they come to Fremantle. The other thing about that door being open and us being recognised right now as being one of the leading kind of tourism destinations is the ability to get funding from other levels of government is much more real than it would have been 4 years ago. So this is where we can start looking at partnerships with, Tourism WA, with Fremantle Ports, with connecting through to those waterfronts that are absolutely critical to the success of our destination. So to slow down now would seem madness to me. And I think paired with the city plan, which is one of the sort of longer term pieces of work coming out of the strategic community plan, this provides the brand side of the equation in terms of investment in property. The city plan provides the detail of where and how. So I fully support it. I think, like all of you, we want to see smart goals and smart reporting against those goals. But as a plan to set the general direction and to shift slightly direction from destination marketing to destination development, I wholeheartedly support that. I don't have any other speakers listed, so I think we're going to. Oh, Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. I just did want to say I agree with many of the comments that have been made by my colleagues, but I also did want to say that I am extremely impressed with the way in which the Director of City Business, in his role formerly as the Economic Development Manager and then going into the current role that you hold, and the CEO in working on this plan, because it's now moving into its second iteration, but it has certainly transformed the way in which we are perceived by state government, by many of the other players that we've been trying to engage with. And as the Mayor did say, this is now a development plan. It is no longer a marketing plan. And I think if we are not out there showing people what we can be, we're just not going to get the sorts of things that we believe we should have. So I am very impressed with the work that's been done to date. I look forward to monitoring it and putting all the caveats on it that we might want to put on it, but I also am looking forward to seeing the outcomes from this work.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. I am going to put that one to a vote. So all those in favour? And against? Councillors Lorva and Vusic against, and that is carried. And that I'm going to take us away from FPOL, and we've got a few to come back to there and go to the budget. And I'm going to move the budget item, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Councillors? Sure. We're going to come back to the remainder of FPOL. I think there's more people in the gallery for budget than I'm assuming, if anyone wants to correct me, than there is for any of those items. So I thought we'd come back to those. I'm trying to keep a tally here of where we've been and where we're going. So I've moved the budget item. It's been seconded by Councillor Moughlin. Councillors, did anyone wish to speak on the budget? It could be a quick meeting. Councillor Vusic.
How could I give up this opportunity? Look, I would concur with Ian Kerr in terms of the budget being sandwiched in this evening with a full budget, with a full agenda. I think the budget had a lot to say. Very difficult to go through and tally it all up. For me, until I see proper monthly accruals and monthly cash statements, we are going to continually have feedback like we've had with the items on audit and risk, where we are having some red flags in our financial management, and it mostly relates to the finance manager in this area of finance. I think it would be remiss of me to say, not mention the fact that we are sitting here in a nice new building. Whether we like it or we don't in terms of design is a personal taste. But for me, this building unexpectedly or expectedly cost us over 20+ million. To be able to finance that large sum of money, we needed to sell income performing assets. And a key driver of what is happening in our city in terms of being able to provide community services and real change in our city is governed, in my view, to that 20+ million. And we're still spending money on the building. So it would be difficult for me to pass this because I don't believe it's been balanced adequately enough. I see the Quarry Street items here. That was in last year's budget for 4.9 million. It's again in this year's budget for 4.5 million. And I just find this type of financial accounting is problematic. I think when I have a look at the $360,000 that we're going to spend on our cat bus, it's really not a lot of money. It really isn't. But it's an indicator that we are going to be in financial challenges, not this year, for the next 10 years. So I would like to have some certainty in the budgeting in the way it's been presented. I don't have that certainty in this budget. I find that our budget amendments last year were excessive, which indicates to me that money is being shifted from one bucket into the next as it's required. So some of those commitments that we should have done, we would have held those projects back, and then we would have called that a surplus. All of those things are problematic. They're not quite transparent, and therefore, for me, I won't be voting for this budget.
Councillors. Councillor Groom.
Yeah, as chairperson of the Audit and Risk Committee who sat through the exit interviews and so forth with the auditor, I would like to clarify one of the comments made by Councillor Busick in her commentary. So the auditors did not find any risks in financial management at the city. There are a number of risks highlighted that are relating to our IT system being fixed up, a couple of process and controls issues. Certainly we do have concerns about those issues and about the risks raised, but I think it's very erroneous to make that statement that it's about financial management, and I kind of like that on the record clarified. So just wanted to put that out there. Also comment on the budget is really hard to understand. There's such a depth of operational costs that the city encounters, and staff do their best over months to give us an understanding of that, to help us work through a list of priorities that they bring to us from their knowledge of engaging with the community, of managing our assets, of delivering programs, and to treat really seriously the priorities that we put on the table, our asks and bids for things that we know our local community wants. So much work goes into that, so many hours from our time, so many opportunities for us to engage, and I hate to think how many hours from the staff time. So I think it's really rough to turn up at this meeting after 5 months and to make these statements about not being able to understand it, not having access of information, not transparency. It's not fair on staff and not an accurate representation of what's gone before. Enough said. Totally take on board Ian's comments about the transparency. Rachel has been talking about how we might get better at budgeting with our community since. Yep, that's right. And it's definitely something we need to get better at, because other parts of our conversation tonight have talked about how difficult the budget is for the city, how we need to increase our revenue base, our rate base, etc. The complexities we've got of the heritage assets that we are, I don't like to use the saddle with because we're blessed with, but we're also saddled with as a really small rate base. Our ageing infrastructure, which a lot of the councils around us, don't struggle with. And it sounds like an excuse, but it is the stark reality that is put in front of us every year when we sit down and look at what we want to do, what we have to do, and our capacity to do it. So I hope that council does improve that. I think it is really critical, if only so our community better understand the challenges and can join us in thinking about what some of the solutions might be for that. Are there things I would like to see funded this year? Absolutely. Are there things that I'm a bit iffy about coming forward as priorities? Absolutely. Is this a team effort, a compromise, kind of our best endeavours at this point to meet a range of needs of our community? Absolutely. And would I like us to not have to put up the rates? Absolutely again. But are our costs escalating, at least at that CPI rate? Absolutely. So thanks to the staff for months of work. Thanks for my colleagues who have probably attended more budget meetings than me because of the crazy year I've had, and yeah, happy to support this budget.
Thanks, Councillor Groom. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, I echo all those comments that Councillor Groom just spoke about, and she's a bit more articulate than me, so well done, Councillor Groom. Look, the budget process, as Councillor Groom mentioned, and as we know, we kicked this off just after Christmas into the new year. So we've been going, meeting fortnightly, and every business unit has come in and given their spiel on what they want, what they're doing, how much it's going to cost, where they're going to take us. And we have an ample opportunity to question them, question the senior staff here about what are priorities and what are not. So for the people out there in the real world, unless you're sitting in on a budget meeting, it's a bit hard to understand, I suppose, because it is such a complex area. You know, we're dealing with things from the rates, which, by the way, 9% I wasn't in favour of. I was in favour of 8%, but I'll still be supporting the budget. I mean, if we all went around saying we're not going to support the budget because of one item or another item, we'd never get anywhere, would we? So it brings me to the point that, and I'm foreshadowing that I won't be supporting the two proposed amendments that have come at the 11th hour or the 12th hour, because we've spoken about these things at length in budgets. You know, we went through destination marketing. It's already been through again tonight. We went through all the rates and the dollar. I mean, everyone's had ample time to put a bit of legwork into this, and I say to those councillors, if they're not happy with these proposals that they're putting up, we'll just vote against the budget. It's as pretty simple as that, but don't inflict it on the councillors that have put in the hard work and the staff to try and change it at the last minute. You know, in the good old days, the budget was presented. The Mayor spoke about the new initiatives, the new projects, the reasons the rates are increased, what the challenges are the city faces, and it was voted unanimously on, and we all lived happily ever after. Obviously, those days are changing. So, anyway, please support the budget. I'm even going to support 9%, which is surprising everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Councillor Thompson.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. On the issue of accrual accounting, could we just that was mentioned? Could I just ask for a minor amendment to the recommendation, and that is after the words regulations 1996, financial management regulations 1996. Could we include the words and in accord with Australian accounting standards? With the provisions of Australian accounting standards.
I will check whether we are of the view that's a minor amendment. Yeah, so it's not changing direction in any way. So I think we can accept that as a minor amendment. Doesn't introduce anything new. So you want to move that as a minor amendment, and we'll see if we've got a seconder for that one. Councillor Jones, did you wish to speak to that amendment?
No, it's only that it's actually included in the report anyway, but I just think given that it's sometimes that issue keeps arising, I think we need to emphasise that indeed it is in accord with Australian accounting standards.
Excellent. All right, on that amendment, any speakers? Councillor Lorver, I think you was up to speak on the budget, not that. All right, so I'll put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Yep. And against? Councillor Vusic is against the amendment. The amendment is carried. Back to the item as amended. Councillor Lorver.
I don't want to speak on the item yet. I just would like to move my amendment that I put forward.
Yep. So that's in the additional docs, I think. So we'll just get that up on the screen and I'll look for a seconder for that one. Councillor Lang, you're seconding what's on the screen here? Yep. All right, Councillor Lorber.
Great. And I appreciate all the comments from all my fellow colleagues this evening and Councillor Graham. I too have been at every pre-budget meeting since Christmas or before Christmas, I think we got started. And, you know, one of the things that we had a hard and fast deadline at the end of January to submit projects for consideration. And there was a big list, and I don't remember ever discussing those projects and why we had put those in. So we have attended a lot of meetings. We've gotten a lot of information. But for me personally, I don't feel like we've actually ever really had the discussion about what our priorities are. And so that's why I'm putting this forward, because you know we've been given heaps of stuff, but we've never actually been able to say why we would want certain things over others, or why we think this is a better strategic direction over another. And so while you know, this amendment here is a debate about what to prioritize, you know, in my view, it's not about the benefits of having a paid marketing program. It's not about whether or not the specific strategy adopted earlier is right for us. In an ideal world, we would fund all sorts of initiatives and programs. But for me, if we're telling the public that we can't afford things like a cat bus, we're leaving, you know, a grant of $500,000 on the table for a community battery, if we're having to reduce our library hours to save money, you know, we're not applying for state grants to fix our roads. You know, every dollar we put into that, we get $2 from the state government. But we said we can't afford to fix our roads. So we're not doing that in this budget. You know, we can't put shade sails down at the WCC playground over there. That's not in there. We're not doing any meaningful work on our heritage stuff. And just last year, we collectively put over $500,000 into Griffiths Park out in Hilton. And yes, a shade sail would be great over that, because then families could actually use that investment. A local resident actually did a heat test, and it was 68 degrees Celsius on that equipment, 68. We've done all this work last year. So there are lots of little projects that are not in this budget. And what this amendment would seek to do is to take part of the destination budget and put it into parks, potentially creating even new green spaces. That's a definite possibility. Now, I know everyone's read tonight's agenda. It was a long one. We all put in some late nights doing that. And I know you guys are all probably pretty well aware that the carry forward projects from last year, the amount that we're spending in municipal funds from last year's budget on projects and operating is greater than we're putting forward this year. I'll say that again. The carry forward amount is $7 million, over $7 million. This budget only allocates $5.6 million. So not even the total amount from last year, just the carry forward amount. So we're investing less this year than we saw fit to do last year, and we didn't get it done. So to me, this amendment wouldn't equalize that, but it would get us a little bit closer to delivering some more projects that our community would really like. Now, we do have a target on the agenda to achieve between 90 to 110% of our depreciation, and we say this is on track to achieve this in the coming years. You know, our assets are $450 million. This is all on page 189, by the way. And it says, as any delay will present a financial burden for coming future generations. Any delay to revitalize our assets will present this burden for future generations. And on the following page on 190, it says, this is on the agenda, by the way, a key objective in this year's budget is to close the gap on that target. Now, I agree with that key objective, but we're only spending, we got a target of 10 million. We're only spending 4 million on projects and capital expenditures. So what this amendment would do is just slightly increase that to 4.5 million. So simply put, you know, this amendment is not about whether or not we should have a destination marketing campaign, because the funds that would be left there would allow us to achieve a lot of what's in there. We can still do the activations. We can still do the cruise ship servicing. You know, we can still do a lot of the things that are in there, but what it would do is take some of those funds that are being spent on direct marketing for investment in our city to encourage people to invest that we may or may not agree with, and put it into parks. And there's no specific projects, as you can see. It would all come back to us for approval. So I encourage everyone to consider that as a good thing that we should do.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. I didn't speak on the destination marketing because my colleagues had spoken so well and said the things that I wanted to say. But this, in a sense, also brings a conversation back. And I welcome Councillor Lorber bringing this up in a sense because it does demonstrate to the public the extent to which we debate these types of issues. So this is just one element of our budget, a very small but important part of it. And we've had these sorts of debates in workshop environments for the last 5.5 months, nearly 6 months. And that's to be expected. That's what we are on council to do. It's one of our most important roles. We are all, whether we're on council, whether we're on staff, whether we're just a resident or a ratepayer in the community, everybody is frustrated that we can't do more. We all know we want to do more. We all would like us to be able to do more. But a city is a living organism, in a sense. And our city is a little bit unhealthy. It's a little bit unhealthy because it needs more people living and working in our city. And we've been saying that strategically for since the last strategic plan, which was completed about 12 years ago. And we know that that is what our focus is. And we know that by doing the 10-year budgets that we've been doing, we know that what we should be spending per annum, the $10 million on these types of projects, and we're only at the moment getting to $4 million. And that is one of the reasons why the budget rate increase is significant, because we need to close that gap. It's one of the reasons why, as a body, as a group of councillors, we have been prosecuting over a number of years ways in which to tighten our belts in a range of different areas so that we can put more money into the projects which we know will make the city physically better, whether it's in parks, whether it's in urban designs, lighting, safety issues, all of those sorts of things. But we also know that we can't close that gap sufficiently unless we do one of two things, or two of two things, in fact. One is to increase rates. We would need to increase rates this year by probably another 10 or 15% to close that gap. That's not going to happen. And the other way is we need to significantly increase the rate base. In other words, we need to do that because not only does that allow us as an organisation to provide the services that we provide to our residents and ratepayers and visitors, but if we can also achieve that healthier city, it means that the private sector also provides the services and the benefits that they provide to the city. And it's the private sector that keeps the shops open, that service our communities. It's the private sector that provides the housing that houses our community. And unless we are able to ensure and encourage that development sector to invest in Fremantle, we won't generate those additional rates. So we talked earlier tonight about 130 and 140 Stirling Highway. There's $2 million worth of rates alone in those two properties once they're developed. All right? That's something like a 3.5% increase in rates. And the destination marketing is a core part of trying to promote the city, not only to developers, because we already did that. We started doing that in 2011, and it took us about 4 years, but we turned the perception of developers around from being, I don't want to invest in Fremantle. Why would you do that? That's just crazy. The policy settings, the attitude is all wrong. And it took about 4 years to turn that around. And then subsequently, I think, as the Mayor has said, we've changed the perception of state government agencies and the state government itself through the sort of work that we do. And then a lot of that is advocacy. And a lot of that is doing the sorts of projects like we see in the destination marketing. Agencies like Jetsy and the like, tourism, absolutely, you're really highly impressed with the sorts of works that we do through this particular budget item. And the last step is to make sure that people who don't currently know why Fremantle is such a great place to live and work, we want to make sure that they actually understand that, because there's a huge amount of development in Perth, there's a huge amount of infill, there's a huge amount of places where you can go and buy an apartment building or a new terrace house or you know, something out in White Gum Valley. There's lots of those all around Perth. But we need, as an organisation and as a community, to promote why they should come to Fremantle to do that. And that's critical in this particular budget item. And unless we get that right, you know, we could spend it on a park this year. But if we spend it on this, then hopefully we'll automatically generate into the near future the sorts of monies that are absolutely needed to do those park projects every year. And that's what I think we're all aiming to do, because that's the sustainable approach to it, rather than just pretending that we're not a healthy city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. I might speak briefly on the amendment. There were just a couple of things I picked up. The Wallylup Court shade sail has been paid for. It's just not installed at the moment because it's winter. The other issue I just want to highlight with this one, I mean, I love everything that's written here. I agree with all of these things are priorities, but I guess one of the things I've learned over my time doing budgets and watching the delivery of budgets is capacity to deliver. So sometimes you can throw more money into a pot and say, ta-da, we'd like you to deliver more of that. And just the capacity of the organisation and the market to deliver isn't there. So, you know, I mean, I know we've put out a lot more trees in the budget, which is fantastic. But I also know the people who go out there and find places for those trees to go are working so hard to find places for each of those trees. If we threw more trees at them, they couldn't do it. And I think we need to look at that capacity issue, and it's one of the reasons we've had a number of carry forwards. It's not because of bad planning or budgeting, it's because the market is coming back with some, I guess, unexpected answers on some of the projects that we were hoping to do. The reason we're not going for the road funding is because we are sort of changing how we do that internally, and I think we need to leave a little bit of space for officers to reprioritise what they want to do. So I think it's a fine balance for elected members to say what our priorities are without shoving kind of things down the throats of officers that just cannot be delivered. And so while I support all of this, and we're at a NOM saying I'd love to, you know, we'd like to investigate disused sumps becoming accessible green spaces, I would have voted for it, because I think that is a body of work that would be fantastic to do. But the challenges with supporting this now and putting aside where the money is proposed to come from are that we don't have the capacity in the organisation to do this, and that something like sump conversions is a significant body of work that involves a bunch of other stakeholders in terms of drainage, property, adjoining properties, other things. So would it be deliverable in the coming budget year? I very much doubt it. So I love parks, I love everything that's emphasised in here, but I won't be supporting the amendment. Okay, Councillor Lorber to close.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I do appreciate that. And, you know, you might think, why parks? because there are lots of things that we would all like to see done. It may not be parks, it could be something entirely different. And the reason why I decided to go with parks was very simple. I did a survey of our community a few months back, and over 100 people responded. And on that survey, I just simply asked them, it was one question. If you had, well, it was $600,000, not $500,000 to spend, would you spend it on, advertising? Would you spend it on this? Would you spend it on restoring our heritage properties? There's a list of items, about 6 or 7 long, or other. And over 52% of the response, actually 56 if you include some of the others that talked about parks, said parks was their priority. And and I agree with the mayor. I love parks, but let me just go back to the destination development report itself. On page 350 of the attachments, it says, to support the longevity of Fremantle as a destination and to enable the This is Fremantle brand to thrive, it needs to be supported by equally compelling on-ground experiences, quality infrastructure, and remarkable services to entice repeat visitation. This will help accomplish what is in the destination development strategy that was adopted by having those quality amenities around for folks. And I also just harken back to the article I referenced earlier with the former mayor that spoke on. It was June 11th. Our current mayor also spoke. And some of the things that were mentioned by our mayor was when we are discovering is that if all the amenities that people need are easy to access, then people are more than willing to embrace high density living. As a council, we have to provide those amenities and to make sure the environments are what residents want. Our mayor went on to further say, we are now getting people moving to Fremantle from overseas where they have lived in apartments. And we believe the barriers to families living in apartments are less than people believe. We just need to provide open spaces and other amenities pertinent to families. That is exactly what this amendment would do. It would provide those open spaces potentially. It would provide quality infrastructure as in the destination development plan itself. And if we can't fund things like the cat bus, and we're not going to apply for grants to fix our roads, and if we're not going to do all those other things, I really personally just struggle with spending $500,000 roughly on a paid media strategy that doesn't have any definition of success. So there's a heap of work to be done in our parks. We all know that. We can all probably come up with a half dozen lists, but there's also things like the Hilton Park Reserve that needs to get done in the future. We can put it anywhere, and that will be a further report from officers back to us on what they believe they can actually deliver. I don't think we need to deliver this year, as has already been evidenced. Over $7 million of projects from last year are still going to be delivered this year. So whether or not it gets delivered this financial year is a bit irrelevant, but it will provide more funds for us to increase the amenity. So that way people who want to live, work, and play, they'll come and they'll be wowed. They'll be like, yes, this is the place I want to be. So what this amendment would do, it'll deliver on the school holiday activations. It'll deliver on the cruise ship servicing. It'll deliver on our parks and green spaces as well. So what it won't do is have a YouTube ad saying, hey, invest in Fremantle, because we'll be showing them why they should invest in Fremantle, and that is by just giving them a great experience. So I hope you'll consider supporting this amendment. For me, it's a simple choice. Maybe it's too simple, but I just think that it's something that we can do, and I think that I appreciate us considering it. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour and against, and that amendment is lost. I have another amendment listed, but I believe that was only in the case that that amendment was supported. Would I be right there?
Yes, I don't have an intention to move my amendment. It was only there in case the previous amendment got up, but others, it's in there. If anyone else wants to move it, they're perfectly welcome to.
All right. Okay, so on the budget, Councillor Lorver, I don't believe he spoke before the amendment on the budget.
No, I haven't, but I would like to move Councillor Sullivan's amendment, please.
Sure. Do we have a second for that? Councillor Vusic on the amendment.
All right, yeah, so what this amendment will do, it'll raise more money to fund destination marketing. And the reason is simple, because in the destination marketing plan that was adopted earlier tonight on page 31, it has a governance structure, and here it talks about the governance structure. It starts with the Destination Marketing Working Group. So if you go back to the terms of reference on the Destination Marketing Working Group, which is page 514 on the attachments, it says the city's annual destination marketing budget, which is this one, is made up of the city center differential rate and additional municipal allocation being considered as part of the annual budgeting process. The differential rate allocation is benchmarked for 2018-19 and is inflation subsequent every year. So basically, this whole working group, their budget is funded by the differential rate. And unless there's a differential rate, we may not be able to fund it. So,
sorry, Councillor Law, but just to clarify, you're referring back to the original terms of reference for the original Destination Marketing Working Group. Am I correct?
Which there's no updated terms of reference.
Sorry, is there no updated term? Yeah, so I believe there is an updated terms of reference.
Then
So
can we confirm that? Because unless that language was taken out of the terms of reference, and I apologize, it was a long agenda. I assume this.
So can I confirm that language is no longer in, following the decision last year to remove the differential rate in the budget, is no longer in the terms of reference? I mean, I think regardless, the debate can continue. I think what you're proposing to do here, if I'm not wrong, is to effectively reverse the decision that was made in last year's budget around the differential rate for city centre.
Well, basically, it would, unless this language was removed, it seems to me we have to have a differential rate to provide any funding. And this was the amendment that was prepared. So if we have to have a differential rate to provide funding per the terms of reference, then we probably need to consider that at least.
Okay, well, we'll just confirm whether we do need a differential rate, but I think my understanding is the budget decision that we made last year would have superseded that anyway. So we'll just wait and find out.
Just through the chair, regardless of the terms of reference for the Destination Marketing Working Group, Council has the ability to set anything it wants through its budget process.
Now, in the current terms of reference, there is no reference to the differential rate, so the Director will circulate the current terms of reference for anyone who is concerned about that.
Wonderful, thank you. Then I'll just withdraw the amendment if it's not on there.
Okay, thank you. All right, so back to budget as unamended. So there was a mover and seconder, so we have to vote on that. I don't think, or does the seconder withdraw? All kinds of action going on up here. Yeah. So the Director wants to clarify something.
So through the Mayor, the current terms of reference does reference the city centre differential rate, but also references additional municipal allocations being made to fund that budget.
Can I just go back to CI and confirm that regardless of that, the budget effectively supersedes that, or that we can do what we like through the budget?
Yes, through the chair, Council's able to make any decision it wants to on the budget.
So we're not led by the destination marketing terms of reference. If that makes sense, Councillor Lawler.
Yes, okay. And I can withdraw my withdrawal then, now that I'll speak to it if it's in there. It just seems to me if we reference a differential rate and that's how something is funded, we probably should have a differential rate to fund it. And again, this is back to partially why I wanted to have this whole thing deferred, because there are lots of little things in there that really don't line up or really make sense with what we're doing tonight. So what this would do, this will provide funding for the destination, not marketing, but destination
development
working group, yep. And it'll do it in a way that's in line with the terms of reference of the current group. And everything will get done. And guess what? There'll also be additional funds that will be available for other unintended contingencies, which will not be allocated. So hopefully we can support that. Thank you.
Councillor Groom.
Probably a question. So my understanding is that we do still have differential rate category for city centre commercial, but council, in setting the budget this year, set that rate at 0.10746. So we have set a differential rate for that category, which is consistent with the terms of reference. Thank you.
I'll confirm that.
Through the chair, that's exactly right. We have 2, 4, 6 differential rates up there on the screen for you.
Thank you. So I think what is being proposed is a change to the rate of this particular differential rate. That's what you're considering, councillors. Councillor Sullivan?
Just briefly, because it needs to be clear that, and I'll ask the CEO to correct me if I'm wrong, but the city centre commercial rate got created as a separate rate category to then differentiate it from normal commercial and industrial general. So I asked that as a question. It was created and then so that it could be increased over and above the commercial and industrial general.
Through the chair, there's actually been various iterations of a commercial city centre rate over time, and at times we've aligned it with a residential rate, and at other times we've separated it out. The last time it was separated was due to striking differences in the valuations set by the Valuer General's office for residential and commercial properties.
Thank you. And it allowed, when the council wanted to create its own destination marketing strategy, it allowed the council of the day to, I think it was around about 400,000 put into that, because primarily it was about destination marketing to do with the city centre. And for the benefit of the public, I mean, we said last year that that benefit was actually way broader than just the city centre, and particularly as we go forward, it becomes even more so. I do have sympathy for Councillor Lorber effectively saying, let's put a little bit more into the rate budget. For those in the public, there are some councillors who probably would have been happy with 8% or 6% even as a rate increase. And I was one of the others that was well north of that, in double figures indeed. Not quite to the 13 point something 3% that happened in 2009 under 2 mayors ago, including Councillor Dowson, but certainly up at that sort of 10% figure. So this would actually get it to more where I would have been happy with. But having said that, I am also fundamentally concerned that we have these types of differential rates where the GRV is actually meant to be largely the tool that tells us how much any individual property owner should be paying tax. And what we do, and other councils do to a degree as well, more or less, is we charge the residents less because they tend to be the vocal part of our community, and we simply charge the industrial and commercial and vacant land holders and the like more because they tend to be a little bit less vocal. And sometimes we can argue, well, maybe they cost us more for roads, or they cost us more for having to spend more on city centre streets than we do on residential streets. I don't know. But I prefer a system that just lets the GRV deal with that. And so I have been personally advocating that these two rate classes, the commercial industrial and the city centre, should come closer to the residential each year over the years. If you did it all at once, it'd be a huge whack to residential, and it won't happen. So in putting up this, when I drafted this, I did it purely because I was worried about destination marketing. But if council wants to do what Councillor Lorber said and put more money into parks, I'm absolutely for that. I think the ratepayers, as Councillor Lorber said, have said that they want to see more money go into those areas. But I'm not sure we should do it by just asking the city centre commercial people to fund that. It should have been something that we did across the board by adding another 0.5% or another percent. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor, we're still on the amendment, yeah? Councillor Mofflin has the call, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Archibald.
Thank you.
Sorry, did you
Yeah,
want to move a procedural motion or?
I just wanted to add that the withdrawal of a motion can be made without debate. We can grant leave to withdraw the motion or amendment upon request of the mover of the motion or amendment and with the approval of the seconder.
I think the mover unrequested it. Yes, you had to follow the bouncing ball there. Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. I just want to clarify a point that Councillor Lorver made when talking about the Destination Marketing Working Group, and it's actually a question to the Director of City Business. Councillor Lorver said that the Destination Marketing Working Group had a budget. Could you please confirm if the working group have a budget themselves, or is it a city budget?
Through the Mayor, the Destination Marketing Working Group does not have a budget. It's the city's budget. The Destination Marketing Working Group is advisory in nature, and they do not have any decision-making authority on how to use a budget.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, I'm not going to be supporting this. We've got a 9% rate increase anyway, and to have a last-minute increase, and we around the room grappled with what that value should be, and it was a difficult conversation, and I know some people were pushed into uncomfortable positions, and Councillor Graham spoke to that earlier, but that he was still going to be supporting the budget. But yeah, for me, I'm not going to be supporting an additional rate increase this evening.
All right, I think we're probably ready to put this amendment to a vote. Councillor Lorver, did you close already? I feel
No,
like
I spoke to it. And
okay.
And for clarification, the withdrawal was when the advice from officers was this language had been removed, and when it was confirmed it was still in there, then it became relevant again, because without it being in there, the amendment wouldn't have been relevant. I think it's just, for me, it's pretty simple. A differential rate, if we talk about it, it's got to be a different rate. If it's the same rate, then it's just a separate category. It's not a differential rate at all. And it's, again, I'll just point out there's more in the plan that was approved tonight that we probably should go back and have a look at and maybe do some tidying up as we go forward as a council, because some of these things may not be entirely what was intended, but it does reference funding the destination. And the quote about the destination marketing budget is a quote that's in the plan, Councillor Mofflin. It wasn't something that I said. It was a direct quote from the role of the group on page 514 of the attachment. And so it's, they're talking about the budget, that part of it is funded through the destination marketing, the city center commercial differential rate, and part of it comes from us. This is 100% coming from us. There's the city center commercial is separate, and I understand Councillor Groom's point that separate could be construed as differential, but I think that's personally a bit of a stretch, and we probably should actually have a different rate if we want to be true to the spirit of what is included in this. And again, this would be roughly $500,000 that would help fund what everyone here has thought we should be funding. So I hope you guys will support it.
All right, I'm going to put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour of the amendment? Councillor Lorver and Sullivan, and against? And that amendment is also lost. So we are going to now go back to the budget as not amended. And do we have some speakers on the budget? Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. I'll be brief, but yeah, everyone's alluded to the work that has gone into developing the budget over the last 6 months. And one of the things that we spoke about after going through that process as well is that there's most probably a way in which we could do that somewhat more efficiently, both for the use of our time as well as that of staff. But I want to acknowledge the work that elected members did put into the thinking around the budget, and particularly, for me, there's there's three parts to how we go about putting that budget together. And the first part is around the strategies and the strategic direction that we want to see. And I think that is the area in which we could most probably spend some more time to be really clear about the direction that we provide to officers to then enable them to do their work. The second part is really about the ins and outs from a revenue and a cost perspective. And we had significant conversations where we have levers available.
I'd just get a bit of shush from the gallery. We can hear you. Maybe pop outside if you want to have a chat.
So,
Councillor Moughlin.
Yep, thank you. Where we do have levers available to us, we spent significant time looking at those levers, both from a revenue and a cost perspective, as to what we could achieve. And I think the direction that we provided to staff, particularly about revenue outside of rates, is significant, and I would like to see that continue to improve over time in the future. And then the third part of the budget process that maybe to talk to in just a little bit more detail is around prioritisation. So there's been a little bit of language about we can't afford this, we can't afford that. But as a group, we sit around and we prioritise what we do with the funding which we have available and which we are comfortable to actually go out and request from our ratepayers what those funds are. And ideally, yeah, we would love to have a laundry list of items to go and spend and to go and implement. But I don't think anyone in this room here is going to be going out and requesting from residents and ratepayers a 20% rate increase, because that's the kind of number that you would be needing to go and try and achieve any of that laundry list. Yeah, I thought you might have, yeah. But what has been really important as part of that prioritisation process, and what I have seen change in this council over now this is my fourth budget that I've been part of, is that I believe a number of areas of our budget had been stripped to levels which were unsustainable. And what this council has recognised is that we need to invest back into areas, and particularly around preventative maintenance and capital renewal. And those areas are vitally important for us as a local government, and they go to our parks as well. You know, we are actually seeing areas in our parks and gardens which are turning around, and it's not at that level that we would like to see it today. But the way I visualise it myself is that it's essentially a curve, and we've come to the bottom, and we're on the way back out. And we're going to continue with the commitment that we've made as part of our commitment to renewal, is to look at ways to continue to invest in those areas so we can get that level of investment back in. But unfortunately, yeah, again, we can't do that in one foul budget swoop. It's something that we do have to look at achieving over time. And we did speak as elected members about that time frame and making sure that we are able to compress that as much as possible, and to find ways for us to do that in the most efficient manner. And I think as a budget itself, I'm quite happy to sit here and quite proud of the work that this group in this room and others outside have done to come to this position, and what is a really difficult piece of work to do, because I think to look at a budget which is in total value only a smidge over $100 million, we get a hell of a lot done. The city does a hell of a lot for not that much. Anyone goes and works in the corporate world or state government, $100 million doesn't buy you a lot. But what's that? A roundabout. But you know, as a local government, we provide services regularly to our community. We maintain our facilities, and we know we're improving those, and we're looking for ways to increase revenue. We clean our streets. Yeah, there's areas where we can continue to do better. We maintain buildings that have been in this, in this town for 150 plus years. We do some remarkable work with not, a not very significant budget. And of course, that's the challenge for this local government going forward, is about how do we make sure that we increase that budget. So as I said just prior to that, really proud of the work that everyone's done to be able to push Fremantle in the right direction, and look forward to what comes from this budget over the next 12 months.
Thanks, Councillor Moughlin, and thanks for your work as Deputy Mayor and Chair of the IEMs in driving us through what was a very long journey. Councillor Lorva.
Yeah, I won't say much. I thank everyone for your indulgence in letting me put forward some amendments that ultimately were not adopted by this council, but I look forward to all the same things that Councillor Moughlin said about growing our revenue so we can be delivering even more in the future. I think that's it's very critical that as an elected body and as an organization that we're delivering things that people can actually see and tangibly say yes and be proud of at the end of the day. And we do that very successfully in a lot of areas. I had hoped tonight that we could maybe do just a little bit more, but that's not the decision. So while yes, we're asking for a 9% increase in the budget, we're delivering a little bit less than we did last year. With that, I'll still support the budget because there has been a lot of work that's gone into it, and there is a lot of good in there. So just wanted to let people know that even though none of the amendments that were put forward were adopted, I'll still be supporting the budget as not amended.
Thanks, Councillor Lorva. I haven't got any other speakers listed, so I think I'll move the item. I might close the item. I won't repeat what Councillor Moughlin has said. I think one thing I did want to talk about, though, was consultation through the budget process. And I guess a frustration that a number of us have probably felt over the last couple of years is there's not a lot of vicinity between the strategic community plan, the old one, and when we're setting budgets now. It feels like that happened quite a long time ago, and a lot of us weren't really here for that. And then when we set the budget, it doesn't logically flow. So I'm really heartened that on the back of this strategic community planning process, which is the ultimate place where the community should be having their say as to the direction we should be heading in, the corporate business planning process, the how does the organisation implement that, is being reviewed with a view to us going to a budget with priorities that clearly reflect the strategic community plan. And the consultation on that so far has been magnificent, and it's not over. So I think we really need to focus on getting as many people into that consultation as possible, because setting those high-level strategic objectives is something we can expect a lot of the community to be involved in. We could live stream our budget meetings. I sort of feel that not that many people would tune in. And the ability to have their say through that process would be very limited. And quite honestly, if they're prepared to put that effort in, they should probably run for council and be in the room. But I do think the strategic community plan, and ultimately maybe moving to a place where we do have some discretionary funds for community to input to their commitment, as Councillor Pemberton has raised a number of times around participatory budgeting, is not a terrible idea. We're not in a position to do that right now, I think, because of the level of discretionary funding available to us, or lack thereof. But I do think as the strategic community plan rolls through, we'll get a lot closer to aligning a budget with the clearly stated priorities of the community. That said, I would acknowledge all councillors who have participated in that budget process with very clear messages from their communities around what is important to them, and that is very much the role of a councillor, is to go out there and understand what is important now, and also to communicate that sometimes we can't have all of that, and I think that is something that everyone in this room is very capable of doing. So as Councillor Moughlin said, thanks staff for that very convoluted process. We really hope that next year it does flow a little bit more easily off the back of the strategic community plan. And thanks councillors who really did participate through that process. And a large number of meetings and spreadsheets. I'm going to put the budget to the vote. All those in favour? And against? And Councillor Busick against, and that is carried. And that is the budget. And the meeting is not yet over. All right. I might just go through the C items and check if there are any items people particularly wanted to speak on in the C items. Otherwise, I'd propose to move 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 on block. 6, you want to pull out 6 to vote separately? Okay, I'm going to move on block 2, 3, 4 and 5, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? And against? Okay, so you want to vote separately on 3 and 6 or just 6? Okay, so we're doing 2, 4 and 5. Councillor Sullivan seconded those. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. 3, I'll move item C23063, seconded by someone, Councillor Archibald. Any debate on that, or you just want to vote separately? All right, so all those in favour? And against? Councillor Busick against. Item 6, C23066, I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. Don't think there was any debate, so all those in favour? And against? And Councillor Busick against, and that is carried. Okay, so we're through the C items, so we're going to backtrack now all the way back to FPOL. So we've got remaining FPOL 5, 10 and 12. So I will move FPOL item 5, the narrow streets, seconded by Councillor Pemberton, nom after all, and Councillor Groom.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pemberton, for bringing this nom in the first place, and officers for progressing it so quickly. Unfortunately, though, I can't make head nor tail of the policy. It doesn't tell me what we're trying to achieve. It tells me what streets we might prioritise looking at, and I just think it's poorly written and presented. And I also think we've missed an opportunity to put forward a far more comprehensive policy statement about council's commitment to safe streets generally, pedestrian access, etc. So I probably should have kind of pulled both of those items, but I'm kind of making the scapegoat of this one. And I understand that the point is to take this out, to advertise it to the community, but I would hope that we were taking policies out that were better crafted and that were clearer for the community and that we were comfortable with, instead of taking them out. And then the feedback I've had from staff is we can always change it later. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like, if officers who've been part of the process understand the intent of the NOM, still can't make sense of the policy, I don't know how the community are going to understand what we're trying to achieve from this. So I won't be supporting it, more as a principle that I'd like to see us putting far better product out into the community.
Thanks. All right, Councillor Pemberton.
I'll just speak just to sort of address some of that, while also recognising, you know, I understand there is some ambiguity, and I raised that initially with staff, where I was a little bit concerned that, you know, my reason for the NOM was really around recognising that there was a growing conflict and tension around pedestrian amenity and safety in our streets, particularly as they become more and more congested with more residents, but also cars and parking in narrow streets, many of which were never designed for cars, let alone so many cars. And then we have people, you know, converting garages into Airbnbs or rental accommodation, and and then parking cars on the street, and adult children staying at home for much longer, and then ending up with multiple vehicles in family homes that where kids used to fly the nest. So we've got this this kind of growing tension that is leading to a really reduced kind of accessibility issue for anybody who has any kind of accessibility issues, or a parent who's trying to walk a pram, or people trying to make their way down a street where cars are parked up either side of the verge. And not really sure where to go, and it's not really clear, and so on. And I guess to again summarise, the intention behind this, and I do believe that the staff understand that is the goal, and so on. But I also understand that we're working in a fairly constrained kind of regulatory environment, and from what I understand in raising these concerns and issues with the staff, is that in order to increase the likelihood of success of us being able to innovate and work with our community to find bespoke solutions, we need to talk in Main Roads WA language. And unfortunately, that doesn't make sense to me either. And yeah, so that was sort of part of the logic, which was that there was a real kind of pragmatic approach to this, which was around recognising that lines and signs and some of the classifications of roads and so on is ultimately governed by Main Roads. And so we need to somehow balance clear communication with our community and a clear intent around, ensuring safety of other road users other than cars, with the Main Roads framework, and give them a framework that they understand, a lens through which we will view this. And I think the staff have even acknowledged that, it's not quite perfect yet, but that's also partly why, and I thank Councillor Jones for his contribution as well, because he's in a similar sort of situation, seeing this day in, day out of the absurdities that we're experiencing. And that's why some of those examples were used, and they weren't to say like this is the solution. It's just to kind of step out a little bit around these are the kind of scenarios, and this is sort of the menu, if you like, of potential solutions that we might look at in collaboration with community members. I guess I really get how that is not really clear and concise and necessarily, but what I really appreciate about the staff's approach in this instance is also that a one-size-fits-all solution is not going to work across our city. So actually we're going to need bespoke solutions, and we're going to need the community's input and buy-in to actually achieve these solutions. And so I think part of what it's trying to achieve that leads to some ambiguity is collaboration and innovation and outcomes that we don't necessarily know what they're going to look like yet. I really acknowledge that that also this will be an interesting conversation to have with our community, because there's really kind of differing opinions, and even thinking about the McCabe Street example, and everybody's concerned about the number of vehicles that are going to be associated with those sorts of major developments and so on. And you just kind of go, how do we work as a city that is traditionally a walkable, transit-oriented city, that is looking to densify and that needs to still function and also enable safety and amenity for people to move around in a variety of ways. So it's a really complicated area that doesn't have a simple solution, and I think that's part of why what's proposed, at present is a bit vague, or and the intention is to be a bit open. It's a conversation starter in many ways. And it would be great if we actually have a conclusion at the end of this advertising period. I think, the best outcome, I think, would be some kind of process and way forward where we collaborate with the community in the hotspots that currently exist and trial some good solutions that may not be seen anywhere else in the city. And that's why it's not quite as clear cut as some of the more regular policies and things that we do.
May I ask a question?
You may.
So my understanding is that we're considering the policy not the administrative policy that has the content that Councillor Pemberton's speaking to. So my problem is the policy, which doesn't say what we're wanting to do. It talks about how we're going to prioritise streets. So
director?
are we considering the policy or both documents?
Okay, I'll go to the Director of Infrastructure.
Thank you, through the chair. It's the policy. We're considering the policy. The guidelines that have been included in there are really to try and show you the sort of journey that we're going on. And I would pick up on that point. It is a journey, as well as trying to engage with Main Roads and the criteria that they set, and try and bring them into a more innovative space will be challenging. But it's also a journey for our engineers as well. So they've really struggled with how to adapt away from standards and set guidelines. And what we're trying to do is open the conversation. So for me, the first part really is about that engagement, and getting to talk to the community and starting to better understand what some of these scenarios might be and how we need to adapt and what a policy might develop into to better cope with the scenarios that we're faced with. So I fully accept there is room for improvement, but what we hope to try and do is educate ourselves as we go through that innovative process.
Thank you. All right, I think we're pretty right to put this one to a vote. So I will ask those in favour and against, and Councillors Groom and Sullivan against, and that is carried. We're going to go now to FPOL 230610, the proposed lease for 13 South Terrace, which I think we'll can't remember who pulled it, but I will move the officer's recommendation and get a seconder for that, please, from Councillor Moughlin. Councillor Vusic, I think you wanted to speak on this one. Okay. Does anyone wish to speak on it at all? Okay, I will put it to a vote. All those in favour and against? Councillor Vusic against. That's carried. So I'll move 12, the Corporate Energy Plan update. I'll move the officer's recommendation, seconded by Councillor Pemberton. And I believe Councillors Archibald and Pemberton have an amendment that you wanted to put up for this one.
Yes, I'm happy to move the alternative amendment that was drafted by Councillor Archibald in the place of my own.
And that is the one that's on a single sheet on your pile of bits and pieces. Seconded by, I'm guessing, Councillor Archibald. All right, did you wish to speak to that?
I'll speak really briefly, and I do thank Councillor Archibald for making the adjustment, because I didn't necessarily want us to commit to, like, we're just signing off on a budget and then here's a $55,000 variation like immediately, which I know is a bit of an ask. But what I did feel was necessary was that I'm really grateful for the report coming from staff, but what it shows is the complete lack of oversight on this whole entire area. Like, this corporate energy plan that was signed off on years ago pretty much got forgotten about for the last few years. Now, I do acknowledge there's been a pandemic, and that had lots of impacts, including staffing changes and access to good staff and other budget priorities and all of this stuff. But I felt like it was really, really important that we bring back the focus and reassert the council's commitment to undertaking this work. And I didn't want to be too prescriptive, but I did want to lean into the work that the staff are already doing. So that's why I've referenced the work that they've referenced in the report. I thought it was really important for us to kind of say, yes, keep going, and we want to see progress in this field, but that the way that you seem to be going is a good one. With regards to the part B around the renewable energy component and so on, I will leave that to next month, but it did seem slightly absurd to me that we have a renewable energy fund and we're not purchasing renewable energy for the properties that we are powering by coal. And that even though it was sort of like a short-term stopgap solution, I think it is just important that we again bring to front of mind that the target set by the council was to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2025, which is only 2 years away. And if we haven't been able to make substantial kind of progress on this, then maybe we do need to just suck up and buy the commercial option. So I look forward to the report in July where we actually get to consider that more fully.
Thank you, Councillors Pemberton and Archibald. Councillor Archibald as seconder and redrafted. Did you want to? No? Yep. All right. Okay. Look, it looks like we can put this amendment to a vote. So all those in favour of the amendment and against, Councillor Vusic against, and then the item as amended, all those in favour, and that's unanimous. Okay. Cool. Thank you. I think that's taken us to the end of FPOL, which is good. So we've done planning, we've done FPOL. 8:24, so my threat of a dinner break, don't know. ARMC 23067, the Financial Management Review Report. I think I pulled that because I want to move the alternative officers' recommendation as printed in the additional docs. I'll get a seconder for that one. Councillor Groom. Is there any discussion on that one? Nope. I will put that one. Councillor Groom, sorry. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, just a quick one. So the committee asked the officers to relook at the recommendation for that, and thank you, officers, for kind of developing a more fulsome one that addressed our concerns and support what you brought forward.
Completely agree. All right, I'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Okay. We have completed the C items. We have a motion of which previous notice has been given. So, Councillor Vusic, did you want to move your motion and look for a seconder? Okay. So, you're moving it?
I'm moving it. Is there a seconder?
So it's C23067. Okay, seconded by Councillor Lang. Back to you, Councillor Vusic.
Thank you for that. Look, I've had a real concern regarding the process that has been adopted in terms of the Fremantle Markets business case. And I think it's really important that although I'm an internal optimist in terms of the motion. However, I think there needs to be an explanation as to what brought me to make this motion. I think what was really important for me in terms of the business case started off on the 27th of March at our informal electors meeting. And, we had a PowerPoint presentation by the Director of City Business, and, there was a positive assessment of FMPL, whose family have had the markets for 40 plus years. FMPL is the only operator to be considered for another 20-year lease, despite the current lease having another 3 years to run. The tender option was canvassed, but only to be dismissed due to the strong relationship with FMPL. Any reference to new third parties coming into the mix was dismissed due to the lack of experienced operators, possible reduction in lease revenue, and the current operators relocating and taking the Fremantle Markets business name and the 150 storeholders with them, and leaving the present site for a long period of time. And I remember that meeting, and I think we all do. I came away, I know I always had a preference to go out to tender, but, it was a presentation and I took the information on good faith. On the 8th of May, I received an email from Tim Foster from GTL Enterprises. The email was disconcerting to me, and there was an attachment that showed that Tim Foster had written to the CEO and on the 3rd of May 22, and sorry about that. And it said, we would envisage meeting with you to discuss the works the Fremantle Council identified in 2020 and providing a proposal back to you within 7 days with our costings over a 3-year period, whereby the improvements will be completed. Our contribution to costs would be greater than Council's contribution. Mr. Foster, Director, and Pippa Foster, Company Secretary, met with CEO Glenn Dougal and Director of City Business Matt Hammond on the 4th of July 22 in the City's offices. I shared Mr. Foster's email with all elected members and with Mr. Dougal and Mr. Hammond. There was minimal response to that shared email. And I found that quite disconcerting in the sense that all I wanted was a satisfactory response on that. On the 10th of May at the FPOL committee meeting, the officer recommendation was to endorse the business plan. The Fremantle Market CEO, Natasha Atkinson, stated in her address to Council that the current operators would take the Fremantle Market's name and the 150 stallholders and relocate the market somewhere else if the city did not give FMPL another 20-year lease. The risk of FMPL taking the Fremantle Market name and 150 stallholders was repeated by the Mayor and elected members during the debate of this item as valid reasons for supporting the motion. And I've got to say at that time I was a little bit concerned about losing the name City Fremantle Markets. However, it is confirmed that it is the City of Fremantle that owns Fremantle Markets and that the stallholders are businesses with their own leases rather than the property of FMPL. In my view, this was misinformation. Councillor Kamada and I moved the item to a full council meeting on the 24th of May for a decision. This is the section that's really important for me as an elected member. Section 5.41 of the Local Government Act, Functions of CEO. Item B is to ensure that advice and information is available to the Council so that informed decisions can be made. It is my view not disclosing the GTL proposal and meeting was an issue because this information had significant substance which could have influenced the decision away from a business case to an open and competitive tender. Prima facie, GTL's proposal was better than what was proposed by FMPL and the City at the time. To help me understand Section 5.1 better, I sought legal advice at my own expense. And I concluded that there was merit in the legal option. In the legal opinion, no matter what the process, the City Council should have been advised of the possible proposal forwarded by Tim Foster to the CEO in 2022. At the Council meeting on the 24th of May, I put a motion of deferral of the item relating to the Fremantle Markets business case process until we could figure out if there were any implications of the legal advice. A hard copy was tabled and accepted by the Director of City Business. The motion was defeated. I assumed that the sharing of the legal advice and the transparency provided would be a basis for a conversation with the Mayor, CEO and the elected members to explore Section 5.41, as there may well have been good reasons for the omission of the GTL proposal. It may have been a mistake. In the absence of the communication on this matter, I asked for responses to the question that I'd raised in Council, and that was, Mayor Fitzhardinge, did you know about the GTL investment proposal? Mr. Dougal, why did you not present the proposal to elected members? Mr. Hammond, why did you not present the proposal to elected members? The responses provided did not, in my view, address the questions. They still don't address the questions. I've asked for a satisfactory response. That's all I asked for. It might have been a mistake, but I'll never know. And I think it made a difference to me, having seen that proposal, and I do think it was not a conversation that would have reflected a Geno's example that was given in the Council. I think it was substantial. I think it was a missed opportunity, and I do think we should have pursued it, if only to disregard it.
Thank you. Councillors? Councillor Lang, you were seconder. Did you want to? Councillor Lorber.
Yeah, I just want to say, I appreciate the Councillor Vucic for bringing this item forward, and while I don't necessarily agree with all of your views on this matter, and I won't be supporting it because I do believe the city was probably legal and compliant with the Local Government Act. I do, when this was first presented to us, we did have a range of risks that we were trying to mitigate, and a couple of those risks, not all of them, but a couple of them. One was the market name itself. It was presented as a potential that we could lose the name. That's proven to not be there. Another risk was that the market may not be there for another operator. Now, there was lots of other risks that we all considered as well. And my only real consideration is knowing that those two are now potentially different. There may be a market that we could go to tender for, and the name isn't a risk. Is this if staff might form a different view as to if this is still something that they would recommend, and that really can't be explored, I guess, because we've already approved the item. But I would just wonder if knowing that those two things potentially would be different amongst the range of risks, if that might lead to a different conclusion. Now, I fully support. We have a great tenant, and it would be a big thing to try to overcome in my mind. But given that the landscape has potentially changed, that's the only thing that I really kind of think about. But I do think that we've been legal and compliant with the Local Government Act, and so I won't be supporting the motion, but just wanted to flag that. I think if we had an updated opinion from staff, that might be useful to go a long way to dispel some of this stuff.
I can put that as an on-the-spot question to staff, but it might be a bit of a rhetorical one. Councillor Archibald.
Oh, I don't support the motion. At the moment, the business case for the future of the markets has been advertised according to the Local Government Act in multiple channels, and the appropriate thing would be for anybody who has an interest in what we're proposing to make submissions, either about the current business case or alternate ideas that people may have. I think that's the appropriate channel. We have not made a decision about the future of the markets. That will be determined once we have got all the feedback from people who have a strong interest in this particular proposal.
All right. I'll go to Councillor Vucic to close in a minute, but I do just want to make something absolutely clear for the public, and that is that we were presented with a choice of process, not a choice of operator, a choice of process. And there are a bunch of risks presented to us around the choice of process. One choice is to go down the extension of lease option with the current operator. Another choice, the choice that was not pursued, is to go out to public EOI submissions. The choice that we made was to go down the lease path and do that under the Local Government Act. So the presence of someone's proposal, anyone's proposal, I could write a proposal, you could write a proposal, in that is irrelevant because it's not the process that we chose to go down. Now, we can debate whether or not enough detail was given about are there other experienced operators in the market. To be fair, we're never really going to know unless we choose that process. That is not the process we chose. We went down the extension of lease path because we assessed the risks and decided that was a better path to go down. So I just want to be very clear that it's not sort of something you can just sort of randomly throw proposals to council. If everyone's proposal who came to council, came to officers, was presented to us for a decision, this place would be crazy. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of ideas. When we're in a process that formally asks for ideas, opportunities, operators, and they're evaluated through a proper process, then we get presented with a recommendation. But that's not the process that we went down in this case. Councillor Vucic, did you want to close?
Yes, I do. You oversimplify things, Ms. Harding, and I think 5.41 is pretty clear. I was pretty clear on that when I looked at it, and I went, you know what? We're not talking about a process. We were in discussion at the time. The risk assessment, we only looked at the possibility of a tender just to disregard it. But it may well have, if we had, and there was a discussion, would there be another operator available? You know, the difficulty of operating markets and as opposed to the current operators, is my view that this wasn't a little proposal. It was a major proposal. It was a significant proposal. It should have been presented so that we could have made an informed decision. You might want to trivialise all of this, but at the end of the day, it was a proposal, and we know why it was a proposal. It was put in writing. It was a proposal that gave him an entree to meet the two top people in our city. There were some figures around it. It wasn't trivial. It was significant, and it was within a year of us making that decision. So, granted, if we had gone down, had that decision, that information provided, and we would have chosen to disregard it, so be it. But we never had that chance. 5.41, I'm pretty solid on it.
All right, I'm going to put that one to a vote. So all those in favour of Councillor Vucic's motion? And against? And that's lost. Okay, that brings us to the end of the public agenda. There's no urgent business. There is a late item. It's not listed here because it's confidential. But it's not listed in the confidential either. It's okay, it's not on this one. Don't worry, it's fine. It's in the confidential though, I'm right to say. So I'm going to, it's a bit line ball. Shall we have a dinner break and come back and do confidential, or do you want to push through? And if so, can it be relatively quick? You want a 5-minute break? Because the caterers are pretty keen to not stay here all night, if possible. So, Councillor Archibald?
I'd really appreciate finishing the meeting. I've got a 15-year-old back at the house who's
fair enough.
Don't
all right,
really
well,
want to
we
stay
can
too
have
late. Yeah.
a comfort break. Make it extremely quick. No, you don't want a comfort break? Push through. All right. Lordy me. No, that's what I'm trying to say. Where is the late item? Okay. All right. Sorry, it's just not on this piece of paper. Apologies. We're just clarifying where is the late item, and it is in the public agenda, not in the confidential agenda. So we will. I'll move the C item number 8. And just remind people that there is information contained in the confidential report, and we will need to go behind closed doors if we discuss that. So seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All right. Any discussion on this one? C, triple RG, RRG, double RG. Oh, all right. Well, I can put that to a vote then. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Okay, that brings us to the end of the public agenda. Now I'm going to move that we go behind closed doors for the confidential agenda. Do I have a seconder for that? And that would be Councillor Groom. Thank you. All right. So I'll just wait to get confirmation that the live stream